With a clearly defined template for resolving Nigeria's long-standing insecurity problem proving so elusive, in what way or ways can the institutions of state be empowered to help? Critically, a growing school of thought tends to believe that these institutions in question, especially the judiciary and law enforcement agencies, have had their independence greatly tampered with to offer any form of sustainable assistance in this regard. Public trust in them have suffered as a result. Can it then be said that there is a connection between rising insecurity in the land and the erosion of the constitutionally imbued powers of Nigeria's institutions? Fola Arthur-Worrey is a lawyer and former Solicitor General of Lagos State and a pioneer CEO of the Lagos State Security Trust Fund. He joins us now to attempt a breakdown of that poser, in addition to other matters that may be of importance. Good morning, Mr. Arthur-Worrey. Good to have you join us on the morning show. It's indeed our honor and a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
All right, let's talk about the subject matter that I'm sure that is of interest to you, the matter of rule of law, but of course in connection with the state of insecurity. I'm reluctant to say lawlessness in some parts of the country. Are they related in a way? Are we having, a resurgence, of insecurity because the rule of law is lack, or there is absolutely no rule of law in the real sense that people like your good selves will want to say it?
It's a complicated issue. The connection between the rule of law as an expression of a desire you like to have, and then the actual imposition. I think for a long time we let things, we ignored things that we should have reacted to. And I think we underfunded our institutions. That's why we had the trust fund, because the police just did not have the capacity to do the work they are supposed to do. So when a country, I think, like, for instance, let's look at this recent issue of removal of VIP protection from, it's critical.
Have you had yours removed, by the way?
I never had. Okay. No, I didn't believe. My philosophy was that if I'm in trouble and I call, a phone number, then they can respond. Not to have, you police the space, you don't follow people around.
Absolutely.
It gave the people who make the decisions a false sense of security.
That's true.
So they were sluggish in responding to, the issues. The key thing is, first of all, we're a federation. So are we running a proper model if we don't have state police, right? Can a federal police a nation as complex as ours? Secondly, in terms of the courts, because that's another key issue about the perceived sluggishness. They're slow. I don't want to get into the allegations of corruption, because until those are proven, I don't want to get.
But they're recurrent, though. They're recurrent. Alisa is a lawyer, and she knows that that's what she deals with when it comes to.
No, but they are just allegations. We haven't really. But it's more about the structure, the methodology. To me, that's where the fault is. You can't run the judiciary in a country where litigation is all over the place. We know that. But you can't get your justice not delayed if you run a system like the civil service. You can't run the judiciary like the civil service. So people blame the judges, but there's all kinds of mechanisms and so on behind the scenes that are not properly dealt with. I have always believed in outsourcing a lot of these secretarial and other stuff, to companies that provide secretarial services, so that you can record your proceedings, right? And the judge can just listen, not having to, hold on, and so on and so forth. So I believe that we're probably just waking up to the reality that we have to put more effort and more resources into insecurity. It's an expensive business.
It is.
You understand. Sometimes, perhaps, in reporting these issues, because we say state of insecurity, but we're sitting here now having a conversation and we're fairly secure. So in some parts it may be so, and other parts so. But in terms of Nigeria, we're always talking about issues as if it's the whole country that is affected. Like I said, I think what has happened is that we've let things get almost out of hand before we've responded. So we need to be on top of the game. We need to be more proactive is the word I'm looking for. Yeah. And and the institutions, are the players in those institutions, are they well catered for? Even the president said the training issues, for instance, are very poor in the police. We have to invest more in. You go to
training and remuneration.
Training. I was coming to remuneration, but training first, because if we keep talking about remuneration, how much is enough? How much do British police get paid? They are not paid special account. They are paid a salary. Oh, agreed, a living wage. But the main thing is the commitment and the training. To be able to deal with these things. It's not money first. It's training and attitude and leadership first.
Yes.
Yeah.
You said that we often talk about state of insecurity, but we're sitting here and we're relatively safe. However, some people argue that the state of insecurity is affecting everyone. Very notably, we have terror groups who have moved further down south in a faster rate than a lot of people would have expected. We're now seeing Lakurawa in Kainji Forest all the way down in Kwara. We're seeing attacks going on in the southwest now, in Oyo just 2 weeks ago. This general state of insecurity, because we're talking about rule of law and institutions, and I worry, and I want to ask your thoughts on this. We've spoken about the failure of rule of law, and I'm looking at this in lens of what we're seeing in terms of our tax laws and the allegations that they were illegally changed after the fact. It's a failure of institution here, the institution being the National Assembly. Do you think that this is a Nigerian problem that goes beyond government and also goes into maybe a moral fiber of our society here? Because there's a failure of institution and consequences, it seems, even in society. And I say that even if we go outside now, we'll see the number of people who jump the traffic light and who are going one way. And in a 5-minute span, I'm sure it will be a lot. So do you think that this goes beyond government and it goes to the moral fiber of society?
I would like to say that, like I said, is weak enforcement across the board for me. Weak enforcement. The belief that at a certain level you are not accountable to anybody. We're weak in consequences. There's too much interference from people or bodies doing things. However, I believe that it's a question of. There's a cultural issue. I mean, I'm old enough to look back to the days of Fola singing "Go Slow." When Uju Elegba, it's always, traffic has always been, for instance, a challenge in Lagos, right? But the structure, the architecture of law enforcement, including the courts and so on, to me, is weak because we've not really federated it. We've not really given states, for instance, give states the power to enforce state laws with their own mechanism. That will leave the federal police to deal with terrorism and so on. Like in America, the FBI, deals with terrorism, fraud, complex fraud and so on. And then you have county police, then you have state police, etc. But this idea of hanging on to one central police makes it very difficult for us to enforce the law. The courts too, in my view, are not, although there have been some improvements after the passage of the administration of justice law. But the courts too, it takes too long for us to see a man who did something a year ago. Within a year, it should be tried. And so, again, we need to ask ourselves whether this British system that we adopted, right, with all the complexities and the, what do you call them now, emotions and so on, to deal with emotion can take you 2 years. Emotion, you haven't even gotten into the main trial. So I think we need to review the system because there's culture. We must have had systems before the Europeans came where you'd finish it in a day. In China, it's a day's trial. They don't waste time, especially if it's corruption. So maybe we're not using the right methodology. I don't want to say that it's necessarily a moral failure. Otherwise, then there's no hope at all. No mechanism will work if we adopt that. We had systems before. There's a lack of fear, right, of consequences. There is. People just feel, is caught later or pay a bribe and get away with it. So I think we still need to look very deeply into who we are as a people and what kind of system is going to work for us. But remember, Nigeria is very complex. We've got so many. You've got the British system, you've got common law, you've got Sharia, you've got... So how do we get, you know, a consensus about what type of system will suit us? Perhaps what is happening now is that the growing, well, not growing, but the insecurity that seems persistent in some areas will force them to relook at the system that they had adopted and maybe make some changes. But I don't know. Nigeria, like I said, is complicated.
All right.
You know.
Okay, you know, for a moment when you mentioned Fola,
yeah,
and then you mentioned Uju-Elegba,
yes,
I thought for a moment that you were going to go into the Fola whiskey argument because
Fola,
exactly.
I don't even know what that's about.
That's good. That's good for
no,
your. That's good for your
about...
head, sir. Oh yes, I do understand you, and that's, you know, on the side. But you know, as an advocate of reform, I mean, we still know very well, you know, the things that you did while you were Solicitor General, you know, in Lagos State, even for the land reforms and things like that. What sort of reforms, therefore, would you want to advocate at the federal level, given the fact that Lagos is Abuja now, and Abuja is Lagos, politically and judicially speaking. You know, the presidency headship is Lagos. Even the CJ, even the CJ.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Lagos now defines Abuja. What sort of reforms do you think will be necessary? You spoke about the state policing, for example, which I believe the president and his team are interested in. But then, as it concerns insecurity, including the aspect of kidnapping that has become an enterprise, what sort of laws and strengthening of the law should we?
Like I said, to me, we didn't react fast enough. And I said, because if I have...
Now that we're waking up.
You wake up first of all and you know, wipe your... It still takes time for you to, you know... I don't think there's a simple... You can't just go into the forest and shoot anybody you see and, you know... I think, first of all, I say that a lot of the attacks, we'll notice, are in the rural areas. A lot. I would say a majority. There are some in the urban, but the majority of attacks are along the highways, coming from the, what are they, the forests, the national forests, etc., etc.
Some people say ungoverned places.
Ungoverned spaces, of which there are many. Now, what do you do in the rural area? Can you as a one entity police both the urban and rural? It's difficult. We need state police at that rural level. Because if you go there, most of the police stations, first of all, there are not enough police stations. Correct. Secondly, they are not well manned. Sometimes just two, you know, etc. Officers. And for the past, I would say 20 years, a third of our police were on VIP protection duty. Yes, I think it was very brave of the president to say, stop. because it's only him that could have stopped it.
I support it wholeheartedly.
100%.
Has it stopped?
Yes, it has, of course. No. You will get a few. You will get a few because we are people like that. We like to jump, avoid responsibility. I've seen some of them hiding in compounds, etc. But generally, you don't have them speeding along, etc.
To be very honest, I'm asking if it has stopped or if we have adopted, because every single person I know who had a VIP police before still has. Some of them now wear plain clothes, some wear trench coats to hide the long guns. So I'm asking if it has stopped or if we have adopted.
In general terms, the final authority in everything federal, that's the president, made a clarification that no more VIP protection. Very clear. And then the IG set up
to the IG.
The IG set up a task force, and they went round. So, but I always say, if we see things that are wrong, and we just smile and say, oh, you see, I know some people that have. Why don't you write to the CP? Why don't you write? You're a citizen. It affects you. Does it not affect you? It affects you.
Yes. Write
to the CP and say, look, such and such and such are still doing VIP protection, because they can't see everything now. They can't see. So I think, again, we like to sort of distance ourselves and, whisper behind the crime and so on. I'm not blaming you in particular, but I'm saying, to deal with these issues of insecurity, rule of law, there has to be a citizen commitment too, at the level of, because the police are not gods, they can't see everything that's going on. I may be registered here, but I may actually be here. So, yes, there's no way that people will not try and avoid the president's whatever, because for so long we've been very permissive. We're a permissive society where this blowing of siren by private individuals doesn't happen in every country. Yeah. In some countries, people get out of their cars and say, "Why don't you fly?" But here we're like, let's avoid any trouble and so on, which I understand, but I think it's not just government, it's also the people's, attitude. Because those people keeping those policemen, they are breaking a presidential directive. But that's how we are sometimes. And I think if I knew anybody, if I knew my neighbor was using what do you call it, VIP, I would let the DPO know, and copy, whoever, the governor, whoever, and then see how that works. Yes.
Addis, are you satisfied with that? How many people are you going to be exposing in the days to come?
I think what we have covert and overt acceptance of certain behaviors when they come from certain people in society, particularly those who are close to the president or to the present government. And so I don't think it's my writing the CP that's going to change anything. But I do take your criticism, and I do think it's fair.
No, not criticism. It wasn't criticism.
No, but I understand, and I do think it's fair. I think very often we overlook.
That's right.
I can promise you I do not overlook any time someone's taking one way, I block them. And I try and be an active citizen in my own little ways.
Right. All right, Mr. Fola, we want to thank you for joining us on the morning show today. I mean, we would have loved for a longer time, given that, this is a big subject, rule of law, insecurity, and the things that we have to deal with. But of course, there will be other times. We want to thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure.